Story 1. I worked as a tennis court attendant for 7 years as a summer job, so I've got a lot of stories like these, but this one is one of the ones that stick out to me. My job was to stay in front of the courts during the busy hours and check for memberships to grant access to the court. What often got me and my fellow attendants into conflict is that for some stupid reason, the town placed us at public courts. I live in a relatively rich area in my state, so as you can probably tell, there's bound to be a lot of entitlement. Okay, now on to the story. It was a night shift at the park that I hated working at cause that's where the worst of the entitled people show up. 2 boys, one who was a year younger than me, I was going into my senior year of high school at the time, who we'll call Jerk, and one who was maybe in his early 20s who we'll call Jack, walk up to the courts. I asked Jerk and Jack for their IDs, and they blatantly ignore me and walk right on. I follow them to try and tell them they cannot go on the court without the ID. Still smug and ignoring me, I reiterate to Jerk and Jack one more time, and then they finally acknowledge my existence. They then say, "Oh, it's fine for us to play. We're state-renowned players and belong to 7 different country clubs and blah blah blah." I keep my professionalism and told them that it doesn't matter, and that these are rules that are implemented by the town, and Jerk and Jack straight up say they don't care. At this point, their arrogance and entitlement was really getting under my skin, as they talked to me like they were kings of the world, and I was a peasant. It's then that a kind gentleman, who we'll call Tom, who knew the rules and respected them, jumped to my aid. He started talking to these kids, telling them that these are the rules and they need to abide by them and get off the court, but they still refused. Now Tom either had a shorter fuse than me, or Jerk and Jack's entitlement and arrogance level raised tenfold, but soon it turned into a screaming match. Tom scolding the boys, and Jerk and Jack sitting there smug and not even fazed as he goes off on them. Soon Tom's tennis buddy, who we'll call David, came over and tried to calm Tom down. So here's the thing. This job sometimes gets bad enough that the police need to be called. One of my coworkers was physically assaulted later that week for just enforcing the rules. She quit right after, so Tom called them once David calmed him down a bit. Jack and Jerk reluctantly got off the court at that point, but started harassing me until the cops came. Here's the thing. Once my shift ends, no one else shows up, so at that point I say to people, if you want to come after my shift, I'm off the clock, so there's nothing me or anyone can do to stop you from going on. My shift ended at 9:15 p.m. I told this to Jerk and Jack, and once again the entitlement kicks in, and while they harass me they say they're going on at 9. I tell them, no, you gotta wait until my shift is over. They continue to tell me otherwise, as if they own the place. That is until the cops come. Tom and I filled in the cops about the situation. I told the cops Jack and Jerk's options, which the cops then told Jack and Jerk to abide by the rules and not go on until 9:15. They, having no other choice, agreed. They, however, spent the last hour of my shift rallying a tennis ball in front of the court entrance, right in front of me, and were harassing and shit-talking me right in my face. Finally, after an hour of harassment, 9:15 rolls by, and in the most arrogant, smug, entitled voice, Jack and Jerk ask if they can go on the court. Absolutely exhausted and defeated, I quietly say yes, but before they do, my coworker who knew of the situation came over to Jack and Jerk, confronted them, which they deal the same level of entitlement to them, and it turns into another screaming match with my coworker scolding them, still Jerk and Jack unfazed. So, here's how bad this situation of entitlement was. My coworker said to me straight up that she's lucky I was working that night, because if she was, then she'd be in jail for attempting to take one of their tennis rackets and shoving it up their butt. How I did this job for 7 years is beyond me. All I know is I want to get the hell out of this town. I have lots of other stories if anyone's interested. Update. I couldn't believe it when I saw them again, Jerk and Jack, walking towards the courts with their tennis bags slung over their shoulders. My heart sank as I realized that they were going to try and pull the same entitled crap as last time. I mustered up my courage and approached them, asking for their IDs. They just scoffed at me and tried to walk right past me. I stood my ground and told them that they couldn't play without their IDs. Jerk and Jack just laughed and insulted me to my face. I was about to call the cops when they started getting aggressive. Jerk shoved me out of the way and said, "We don't have to listen to you, you little twerp." I was shocked and scared, but I managed to call the cops and tell them what was happening. Jerk and Jack were still trying to get on the court, even though the cops were on their way. They were shouting and cursing at me, telling me that I was a worthless loser and that they were going to sue me for harassment. Finally, the cops arrived and took them away in handcuffs. It turned out that I could press charges on them for shoving me and harassing me while doing my job. I was so relieved that they were gone, but I also felt angry and frustrated that they had been able to get away with their entitled behavior for so long. After that incident, I made a decision to quit my job as a tennis court attendant. I realized that it wasn't worth putting myself in danger just to enforce some stupid rules for entitled people. I found a new job in a different town and have never looked back. But sometimes, when I'm feeling nostalgic, I think back to those days and wonder if things have changed at all. I still have plenty of stories from my time as a tennis court attendant, but I'm not sure if I'm ready to relive them just yet. Story 2. This happened in 2008 to 2009, but I thought this community would appreciate the story. In 2008, I had just left my husband. I caught him cheating multiple times, and I was just over it. A new girl, we will call her Amy, started at my job, and we made a fast friendship. I was in the middle of packing up and moving out of my house. I needed a roommate for a new apartment I was looking at because my wages weren't going to pay the bills. So we move in together and live peacefully together for a while. I was moving on with my life. I had gotten a better paying job, was spending time with my friends, and I felt okay with life at the time. At the time I was 25, single, and not looking for anything serious, so I had a friend who would stop over a few times a week for some adult fun. Amy was cool with it on the surface. It did not affect her in any way. My friend didn't hang out at our place. He didn't eat at our place. He didn't use our household supplies. My relationship with him affected her exactly 0%. But I guess she was a little green about the fact that I was getting some attention, and she was not. She would flirt with him, go visit him where he worked, etc. But he was absolutely not interested in her. This is where things started to go downhill. For context, she had been married a few times, she was 13 years older than me, and the dads had full custody of their respective kids. She was dating someone, but he was already in a relationship, so he wasn't about to commit to anything besides stopping by for 30 minutes after he worked the night shift every day. I tried to point out all the red flags, but she was convinced it was love. This dude used to hit on me constantly in front of her. He was very open about being in a committed relationship with his girlfriend, so I have no idea why Amy thought this was going anywhere. After a few months, I met someone I wanted to be serious with, so we started dating. We will call the guy Tom. Tom and I got serious pretty fast. He was living in a horrible situation, so he moved in with Amy and I pretty quickly. I think it was after about a month of dating. So we have our room, and she has her own room. The bills went from 50-50 to 33-33-34 to make sure things were still even. We had a shared kitchen, LR, and bathroom. After Tom moved in, she started openly hitting on him in front of me. Every guy I had at my house, even just friends she had to hit on. None of them ever took her up on it. Every single one turned her down, and I think this added greatly to her oncoming behavior. Over the next couple of weeks, Amy did a complete 180. She stopped paying rent, refused to buy any food, and would just eat whatever Tom and I bought, and would not wash her dishes. We had 2 cats, one hers and one mine, and she would never clean the litter in her room, so her cat would use our hallway floor as a bathroom every single day. Every day when I got home from work, there was a big steaming pile of cat poo right inside my front door, sitting in the middle of a giant puddle of urine. My cat was locked in my room at night with her own supplies, so there was 0 chance it was her. It was the same thing every morning by the front door. Whenever she was done eating the food she stole from me, she would set her plate with the leftovers on the kitchen floor for her cat to pick at. She would leave the plate there for days. to the point that if I didn't pick them up, there would be multiple plates on the floor with food in various stages of decay. All of my dishes started going missing, except for the cat's plate, of course. And what dishes were left, she refused to wash ever. She used my toilet paper, my laundry soap, even my lady products. This went on for about 2 months, and it just kept getting progressively worse. She would use panty liners every day and would change them multiple times a day and stuff them in the garbage can in the bathroom. She would leave it there completely overflowing and spilling onto the floor for days until I caved and put on gloves and threw them out. The can would be full in about a week, so this happened a few times. That's not even the worst of it. My expensive DSLR went missing. I was a photography hobbyist at the time, but it was my dream to be a professional photographer and own my own photography business. I would shoot stuff for friends and family as practice, and one day I grabbed my camera bag from the shared living room, and as soon as I picked it up, I felt my heart sink into my stomach. You know that instant dread that grips you the second you realize something truly gut-wrenching has happened. I opened the bag and of course the camera is gone. That was an expensive camera for that time of my life, and it was a gift from my parents, so I was truly devastated. I couldn't prove a thing, and I wasn't even sure how long it had been missing. It could have been her BF that took it, but either way it was gone. So now this is it. This is the last straw. I need this witch out. I went from a nice girl to a damn psycho in about 30 seconds. I'm not the violent type, and I hate confrontation. I'm not waiting for an eviction to go through, and I really didn't have the money for that anyway, so here's where I start my petty revenge. Amy wants to live here with me rent-free, stealing my stuff, hitting on my boyfriend, and neglecting her cat. So be it. But it's going to be on my terms. One vital piece of information. In my divorce, the jerk moved back in with mommy, and I took everything from the house to my new apartment, so I owned everything and the lease was in my name. I started by changing the Wi-Fi password and the computer password. The following week I had my cable company come and remove the cable lines to her room. I bought a small fridge for my room and a cabinet and put all my food and personal supplies in my bedroom and put a secure lock on my door. When her cat went poo-poo on the floor, I would pick it up and smear it on her bedroom doorknob. Overflowing bathroom trash cans filled to the brim with her panty liners were dumped on her bed. I removed the knobs to the washer and the dryer. I did everything possible to make her life uncomfortable. I did other small stuff. Anything that came to mind. A few months prior, Amy and I had been working at the same store, and she borrowed another coworker's laptop. She ended up getting fired, but she never gave the laptop back, and the coworker was really trying to get it back from her. Amy ghosted her, of course, so while she was out one day, I went in and took the laptop and gave it back to its rightful owner. Amy called the cops on me and said I stole her computer, but I explained what happened. She admitted to the cops that the computer wasn't hers, and the cops said it wasn't their problem anymore. That one really made her hate me. She wasn't working at the time, so it's not like she had money to do anything or buy anything. She was literally just existing in a room in my apartment. She would disappear during the day, but I have no idea where she was going. She moved out after about 6 weeks. When she moved out of my apartment, I didn't even know she had left. I just noticed she wasn't coming or going for about a week. So Tom and I cleaned out her room. She left clothes, broken furniture, a cardboard dresser, and 5 39-gallon garbage bags of trash we collected from the mass piles of panty liners, rotting food, and ordinary trash we found in the room. It's a miracle we didn't have roaches. I found all my missing dishes, silverware, and cups all covered in food and grossness. I just threw it all away. I wish I still had the photos though. Oddly enough, about 6 months later, I opened my back door to take out the trash and my camera was in a bag hanging from my doorknob. I know Amy definitely didn't return it. For about 2 years after, every time I would find out that Amy was living with someone new, I would text them and send them the photos of her room, papers in the trash that had her name on them, and I would tell them the whole story. One time it caused the people she was living with to throw her stuff out on the porch. She had just moved in and they had small kids and they didn't want to risk it with her. I stopped after that. She knew it was me, so I figured I had sufficiently made my point. Story 3. This happened some years ago. I'm in my 30s now, but back then I was 22. My sister was 18 and was my mom's golden child. My dad thankfully has a good head on his shoulders and always called my sister out on her nonsense. But my mom's interference always meant my sister got off easy anyway. This is what happened back then. My parents decided to take a vacation to ski in Aspen and let my sister watch the house for them. They told her no parties, but that was a rule she straight up ignored. A day after our parents left, my sister started sending out invites to a party, and she was promising free alcohol. I didn't see that post just yet. But my sister called me and asked me to go get alcohol for her party, because I was over 21 and could legally buy it. She also wanted me to pay for it and said she'd invite me to the party and introduce me to an easy girl in order to pay me back. I told her that I wasn't going to break the law to make her happy. She should never have told people her party would have alcohol. She screamed at me over the phone that I was ruining her life, and that she couldn't take back the invites now that they were all over her FB. I looked at her post and face-palmed. I told her that what she did was really stupid, and she and her friends were all underage, so it's illegal. She tried to say it'd only be illegal if I narked on them. I said I wouldn't narc, but I wasn't going to buy her booze either. She screamed at me some more, so I hung up the phone. Well, that night my sister had the party, and someone called the police for underage drinking. After being arrested and confronted by police later on, my sister threw me under the bus and said that I'd supplied the alcohol she was using. Turns out she actually broke into Dad's liquor cabinet and thought it'd be better to frame me for her crime. Police came and arrested me at my apartment the day after the party. They seemed already convinced I was guilty and didn't really listen to me when I said I was never there, but I willingly cooperated with them. At the station, I told them the whole story and got them to look at my sister's FB post. Thankfully, there were a few people there who listened to me, but I still had to sit the night out in a cell while my parents were called. My mom and dad flew back home overnight and bailed out both my sister and I. But my mom tried to make my dad leave me in jail because my sister had told them her lies as well. But my dad took the time to talk to me and look at my sister's FB, so he believed me. This caused a fight between him and my mom. When they got home, my dad discovered my sister had broken into his liquor cabinet and spoke to police on my behalf. My mom, however, still wanted the blame to fall on me because, as she put it, the charges were ruining her baby's future. But my innocence was further proven by the fact that I and my car were seen on CCTV when I left work. And when I arrived at home soon after, as the apartment I was living in then had CCTV cameras to watch the parking lot, my car did not move from there for the rest of the day and night. In my sister's story to the police, I had driven out and gotten the alcohol for her. But I wasn't seen on CCTV in any liquor store in the county, and my bank account showed no transactions buying alcohol. My parents' house also had a camera at the front door, and my car was never seen in the driveway that day. After being confronted with those facts, my sister's story changed to saying I already had the alcohol and gave it to her at my apartment. But my sister's car had never showed up at my apartment either, and there were like 3 cheap beers in my apartment fridge and no hard alcohol. My sister finally had to give up on her lies, and my parents were severely disappointed in her. But my mom still tried to convince me to take the fall for my sister. She came to my apartment and actually demanded that I tell the police that it was all my fault. I said I wasn't going to ruin my future for my sister. She refused to leave and went from demanding to begging. She even got on her knees and tried to convince me that she and my dad would make everything okay in the long run if I just took the blame now. I said I'd rather live my life poor than have that felony on my record. She threw a huge fit and started throwing things because I refused to do as she wanted. I threatened to call the police, and she left my apartment cussing me out like a mad woman. I've never heard so many F-bombs out of her before or since, but she kept them up all the way to her car and followed it up with saying she should have aborted me before driving off. I called my dad right away and told him everything that happened. He was insanely pissed and got in a huge fight with my mom as soon as she got home. She didn't even deny anything she said or did, because she deemed it would have been for the greater good of their daughter. But my dad told her that she couldn't destroy me to save my sister. Then he threatened to divorce her if she didn't try to make things right. She ended up sobbing and then saying she'd do whatever he wanted. My dad said that it was couples and family counseling, or it was divorce. My mom signed a prenup before she married him, and really had no choice. In the family counseling, I called her out on how she always believed my sister's lies. My sister tried to say they were not lies, but each one I pointed out from over the years said otherwise. I'd taken the time to write a list of all the ones I could remember from the past decade that had all been proven she lied, and my mom and sister were forced to stay silent as I read them all. They tried to interject repeatedly, but my dad and the counselor silenced them. My sister, now proven beyond a doubt to be a liar and a manipulator, just shut down and refused to say anything more to the counselor, and my mom finally apologized to me. But it was obviously a forced apology because she looked so uncomfortable doing it. I told her that her apology was very fake, and after so many years of favoritism, the damage was already done. My relationship with her never really recovered, because she was convinced I was guilty no matter what was said until my sister admitted the truth, and then wanted me to pretend to be the guilty one anyway to protect her favorite child. But nothing went her way, so she just went back to crying about it. When my sister went to court, my mom pleaded with the judge to go easy on my sister for the charges of underage drinking and giving other underage people alcohol, as well as attempting to frame me for her crime. She also resisted arrest when the police came and shut down the party. She was very drunk when it happened. They kept her in a cell overnight to sober up, and then she told police I'd been the one to provide the alcohol. My mom's begging, along with the relentless lawyer my parents hired, got the judge to cut a deal, provided my sister plead guilty, which she did not want to do. But her lawyer highly recommended she take said deal to avoid jail time, because there was no other way of keeping her from getting a felony on her record. My sister's lawyer used the fact that the alcohol had not been bought that day, but rather had already been in the house long before the party happened to help lessen the charges. My sister's FB had also been completely deleted by her as soon as she was able to in order to hide the post. The judge just wanted the case over with, so my sister got off with a huge fine that our mom paid most of out of her own pocket, and a couple years probation. She was also made to get therapy too by our dad. She's never really shown actual remorse for what she did though, and only had animosity for me, no matter how in the wrong she was. She was eventually diagnosed as a narcissist after Dad made her go see a doctor. After her probation and 4 years of college were over, she decided she was going to leave home for California and never come back once she landed a good job. She currently works in an office in LA, and we've not spoken in years. Dad got her that job, and she's not shown any real appreciation for it. Even my mom has given up on her ever coming home for the holidays and us being a family again. It tore her up inside for a few years, but now she's just bitter. She doesn't really blame me anymore, but we only seem to show indifference to each other. Just because my sister cut her off wouldn't make me the new de facto favorite. It just means my mom lost her baby and isn't getting her back. She can't leave my dad because she's too reliant on him, despite having her own career. She'd never want to be on her own again, so she's just become a shell of her former self. Things between me and my dad are still great. He's pretty much disowned my sister for what she's done, and has stopped caring if she'll ever talk to him again. He and my mom don't even sleep in the same bedroom anymore. She moved into the guest room some 5 years ago and has stayed there. Their marriage is really only one on paper these days. Info: it's a felony or misdemeanor to provide alcohol to minors, and my sister provided stolen alcohol to at least a dozen people who were under 21. Then she resisted arrest and tried to frame me by lying to the police. The fact that she got off easy thanks to the shark-toothed lawyer my parents hired for my sister was incredibly lucky. Not that she was ever appreciative. The judge hit her with a fine for each person she gave alcohol to. which added up. And with the cost of the lawyer, well, my parents were out a lot of money. Story 4. I work in an office, managing finances for a European company. There's a particularly unpleasant colleague in our team, a single woman nearing her 50s who seems to think it's her life's mission to judge everyone around her. She criticizes everything: how people do their jobs, their personal choices, their personalities, and even their clothing. Recently, the tough economy has added pressure to the workplace, and she's been even more vocal, complaining about anything and everything. Unsurprisingly, most of her complaints are baseless and unhelpful. One of her recent grievances was aimed at me. She accused me of not properly protecting sensitive data because I saved our monthly financial reports on a shared drive accessible to others. The thing is, this system has been in place for decades, long before I joined the company. No one ever had an issue with it, especially considering that sensitive data often gets printed out and stuck on office walls anyway. Normally, I just ignore her complaints and carry on, as my boss and I are skilled at tuning out noisy complaints that lack merit. However, this time, I decided to handle things differently with a touch of malicious compliance. I implemented her suggestion with gusto, setting unique passwords for every file containing even the slightest bit of sensitive data. Now, she has to keep track of all these passwords to access the information she needs. But that's not all. I took things a step further. My boss and I reviewed the data she routinely accessed and decided that some of it, particularly budget information for her operating expenses, was no longer appropriate for her to see. Now, if she wants access to certain budgets, she must provide proof of the associated cost. If she can't, that budget is simply gone. Needless to say, this has made her job significantly more complicated. She has to juggle a mountain of passwords just to do her daily tasks. On top of that, she no longer has the freedom to make assumptions or demands about her operating budgets without first jumping through hoops to justify her spending. The best part: this approach has been fully backed by my boss, who agreed that this was a reasonable response to her unfounded complaint. While she continues to judge everyone else, she's now bogged down in the very rules she insisted on imposing. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply giving people exactly what they asked for, just with a little extra flair. Story 5. This might not be the most dramatic tale of revenge, but it brings me some satisfaction, and it's still playing out. I work in the outbound shipping department of a factory and have been on swing shift for nearly 9 years. I've always loved swing shift. It's cooler in the summer once the sun goes down, and the slower pace in winter allows for extra projects that keep everything running smoothly. My core responsibilities are straightforward: load trucks, which takes about 10 minutes per truck, clean up any messes I make rare after so much experience, and store daily material samples. About 6 months ago, our new boss began discussing a shift schedule change, moving from 5 8-hour shifts to 4 10-hour shifts. This idea had been floating around for years, but now it seemed imminent. All 3 shifts were set to change, and we were called into the boss's office over the summer for a vote. The vote, we were told, had to be unanimous. Our swing shift currently runs from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. I've been working this schedule for nearly a decade and have adjusted my life around it, including a 1 a.m. bedtime since I live an hour away from work. The proposed new hours were 3 p.m. to 1 a.m., with truck loading still ending at 10:30 p.m., a pointless gap. We discussed this with the boss and offered a compromise. We'd vote yes if the hours were adjusted to 2 p.m. to midnight. The boss agreed, and we cast our votes. Fast forward to August 30th, when it was time to pick schedules by seniority. My team and I chose swing shift as planned. A younger coworker even opted to stay on swing shift instead of moving to day shift, specifically because of the agreed-upon hours and his preference for Fridays off. Before finalizing, we double-checked with the boss to confirm the 2 p.m. to midnight schedule. That's when we were blindsided. No, the swing shift hours will be 3 p.m. to 1 a.m., with truck loading ending at 10:30, he said. We confronted him the next day, and he tried to deflect, claiming someone in the office had changed the schedule. Weeks later, under more pressure, he admitted it was his decision all along, though his reasoning remained vague and unconvincing. Here's where my petty revenge kicks in. Over the years, I've taken on a significant amount of extra work tasks that aren't part of my official job description, but kept the facility running smoothly. I swept all 3 floors of the truck loading area, which gets filthy due to powdered aggregate, managed customer lists and stocking orders in our billing program, and handled preventative maintenance on sump pumps and other equipment. I even took it upon myself to return stray tools to the tool cage when coworkers left them lying around. Since the boss decided to override our vote and change the schedule, I've stopped doing all of it. The result? The facility is falling into disarray. Piles of material are accumulating everywhere, and the office has a layer of dust half an inch thick on the floors and surfaces. Tools are scattered and impossible to find because no one bothers to put them away. Even though I'm no longer performing maintenance, I still check the equipment occasionally, and their decline is becoming painfully apparent. Most of the machines are decades old, some nearing 70 years, and without regular care, they're starting to break down. Over Christmas weekend, one of the older buildings even flooded. While I can't directly attribute the broken pipe to my absence, I probably would have caught it early if I were still checking pumps and heaters on Fridays. I've also cleaned out my locker, taking all my personal tools and any tools passed down to me by former coworkers. I made sure to leave company-owned tools in the department tool cages, but many of them have already disappeared, abandoned by coworkers on dirty job sites where they've become clogged with grime. The messes are building, and the facility is becoming a disaster zone. While I hate to see the equipment suffer, I take a certain satisfaction in watching the consequences of the boss's decision unfold. It's still a work in progress, and I'm not sure if I'll stick around to see how bad things get. One thing's for sure, if they thought breaking their word would have no consequences, they were sorely mistaken.